brought the projector, but it has a special cord. I must have left it at the office.
So, that's okay, when we did ours last year, I couldn't get it to work.
Oh, really?
Finally got to work after about 10 minutes. Welcome back from our hour-long break.
Okay, this is an eyesight test. So the projector, I forgot, I left the cord at the office. But we do have handouts, so for those who are farsighted, you can see this one real good. For those who are nearsighted, you can see this real good. So
Here, Joe.
Maybe
Turn the light on.
turn the lights off, yeah, so see if that makes it easier to see. Sometimes it might make it brighter. Of course, you got to be able to see too.
no, we can see it. That's good.
Beautiful.
Oh, very nice.
And one for Jan.
Joe's coming around with the rest.
Okay.
Thank you.
And each have one.
Put it up there.
This
You have to look at Irish.
this is about Our Lady of Lourdes. And Diane and I picked this one because we were fortunate enough to have been on a pilgrimage last year in April, right? May, where we went to Fatima, Lourdes, and
Paris.
Paris.
For the Shrine of the Miraculous Medal.
Right, so that's why we picked this Marian devotion, because we figured we have some home pictures we can show you. Too.
This is a slideshow of our trip.
Yeah. You don't mind. You're a boring slideshow. Oh, here's Diane shopping at
Shopping for the statue.
Go.
Okay,
It's
so
fine.
we'll begin. Okay, Lourdes. These is either pronounced Lord or Lourdes. The small town in the Pyrenees in southwest France, 497 miles south of Paris. There are only 17,000 inhabitants of the city, but over 5 million visitors and pilgrims come there every year. The main place is 52 acres with 22 different places of worship, 3 basilicas, a variety of buildings for pilgrims and for volunteers. Now why? Why is the Lourdes developed like this? Well, because in February 11, 1858, that's 150 years ago last week, a 14-year-old girl named Bernadette Soubirous had the Virgin Mary, a lady appeared to her as she gathered firewood with her sister and a friend in a remote grotto near where she lived. In the next coming months, she would have 18 visions in all, with the last one being July 16, 1858. And we will talk more about the apparitions of our Blessed Mother as we go through the presentation. Bernadette's life, the apparitions began in 1858. In 1988, Bernadette entered the monastery at Nevers. She became a daughter of charity.
1866.
Oh. That's like the lights bed, yeah.
Yeah.
And 1879, Bernadette dies after a long illness.
You can turn lights back on if you need to.
No, it's okay.
Okay. In 1933, Bernadette is declared a saint.
Okay, now this is going to be tough reading for you, but basically this slide is the first 6 apparitions. But you can look at it here as well. It's also supposed to be here.
I'm reading on the paper.
That's right.
Let's put a light on so people can read their papers.
You want to do that? No.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Well, one light.
You know what? Yeah, it's fine, because we can still see as much there as we can see. So that's
Okay,
good.
all right. Maybe that's best. As Diane said, the first apparition actually was a Thursday, February 11, 1858, and she had gone there with her sister and a friend named Jeannie Abadi and her sister Abadi and her sister Tanette. And they were crossing a stream, and she had difficulty crossing the stream, and she started to throw some rocks to see if she could cross the stream. And what's interesting to me about, one of the most interesting things about these apparitions, these set of miracles, is that there is actually an account of this in her own words. Now, we're familiar with, for example, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Well, it wasn't written down in his own words. Other people reported what he said. But we actually have Bernadette, St. Bernadette, in her own words, and so I'm going to read it. It says, I came back towards the grotto and started taking off my stockings. She was going to cross the stream. I had hardly taken off the first stocking when I heard a sound like a gust of wind. Then I turned my head towards the meadow. I saw the trees quite still, so that kind of confused her. It's like, there's wind, but the trees aren't moving. I went on taking off my stockings. I heard the same sound again. As I raised my head to look at the grotto, I saw a lady dressed in white, and this is where this statue comes in, but a lady dressed in white, wearing a white dress, a blue girdle, and a yellow rose on each foot. And this is the way Our Lady is going to appear to her another 17 times, exactly like that. A rose on each foot in yellow, the same color as the chain of her rosary, and the beads of the rosary were white. Now this was a very clear vision to her, but her sister and their friend did not see it. And in fact, in all 18 apparitions, later on you're going to see there's literally not hundreds, thousands of people there. Other people did not see the apparition, only Bernadette. The lady did not say anything to her. Okay? She merely smiled. Bernadette was a little bit terrified at this whole thing, but because the lady smiled, she put her hand in her pocket and took out her rosary, and the lady started saying the rosary. Okay, but you couldn't hear anything. She had out her rosary. So Bernadette knelt and prayed her entire rosary. Meanwhile, her sister and her friend was basically just watching her in this rapture, okay, which other people later would report too. They see her in kind of like this rapture of looking at a vision and praying her rosary. When they were done, they went home. She told her sister and her friend, what she saw, but she was scared because they didn't see it. She said, "Don't tell, my mother anything." Well, of course, you know what sisters do. When she got home, told her mother gave them all a beating, okay? Because I'm not sure why, but her mother gave them a beating and told her never to go there again. Told her never to go there again. The second apparition was the following Sunday, and she just felt drawn to go to the same place. She, even though she had been forbidden to go, she did bring with her a little bottle of holy water. This is water from Lourdes, but it wasn't this bottle. But because she wasn't sure exactly who this lady was, okay, and she was a little bit scared and thought, well, maybe it's the devil. Maybe it's a ghost or a devil or something unholy. So she took holy water, and actually, this time when the lady appeared, she took holy water and sprinkled it at her, and the lady just smiled at her. Didn't say anything, just smiled at her. And when she had emptied the bottle, she said her rosary, and then she left. Okay, but she still wasn't sure who this lady was and whether it represented an evil spirit, except she thought probably not this time because it didn't react to the holy water. And the other thing that's interesting is that, in her words, she also thought, well, maybe this isn't an evil spirit, but a holy type spirit, because she had feet instead of, and the belief at that time was that if it was demonic, it would have hooves. Okay, so third appearance was the 18th of February, so that's what, just 4 days later. Two villagers, because now the rumor had started to spread, two villagers went with her, and they observed her. This time, Our Lady spoke for the first time, okay? And each time, by the way, when she went there, she prayed her rosary. And the family was very, in fact, Diane maybe later will talk about the house, very small house, but they still had a place in their house for prayer. And they were very devout Catholics, and they did pray the rosary frequently. But this time the lady spoke for the first time and asked her, would you have the goodness to come here for 15 days? And what was interesting about this, that the commentators note on this, is that the language that Our Lady spoke was a certain type of French Occitan, O-C-C-I-T-A-N, dialect. So it was Bernadette's dialect, the local dialect, but it was also a very formal way of saying, in other words, it wasn't slang, it was a very formal way of saying, would you please come back? It was, would you have the goodness to come here for 15 days? To which Bernadette replied that she would. Fourth apparition was the next day. This time, Bernadette went there with a candlelight, and the lady asked her to leave the candle when she was done praying her rosary. What's interesting about that, one of the slides you see, and they still to this day have it, is there's a candlelight procession in the evening. And that's kind of the origin of that. Fifth appearance was, again, a day later. Yes, the very next day. At this occasion, 30 people were present. Okay, nothing was said. Okay, everybody prayed their rosary. Bernadette prayed her rosary. Each time she saw Our Lady exactly like this, appearing like this, and appearing in the grotto.
Nobody else saw it.
Nobody else saw her. That's going to be through all 18 apparitions. Nobody's going to see her. Sixth appearance, 100 people were there. Okay, and this time the police commissioner was there. Okay, and I was starting to get the attention of the town authorities. The police commissioner basically was very disturbed by what was happening. Thought this was all kind of like a hoax type thing. Nobody else is seeing this. But each time Bernadette would kneel, she'd pray her rosary. Everybody would observe her being in rapture, I think is the way, best way to explain it. So the father actually, Bernadette's father had to assure the commissioner that this is never going to happen again. She's not going to come here again. We're going to forbid it. Don't worry about it, because the police was worried. Seventh? You got the seventh?
So now you see each day that more and more people are going to be coming because they're going to be hearing about the events and they're going to be curious. They want to know what it's all about. On the seventh appearance, which is 2 days after the sixth, there was 150 people present, and a court official came, like Joe was saying, more of the authorities were getting involved and wondering what was going on. And Bernadette was summoned by the lady and given a secret, which she related was for her ears alone. And we never did find out what that secret was, but it was a secret just for Bernadette. And the eighth appearance, we have now 250 people present. And the thrust of the message from the lady to Bernadette was penance. She was preaching penance, and that she asked Bernadette to do penance for the sinners of the world, to kiss the ground as an act of penance for sinners, which of course Bernadette did. On the ninth appearance, this was on the 25th of February, the very next day, was the day that the spring began to flow. What happened here was that the lady told Bernadette to drink at the fountain. Well, the fountain at that point was more like a puddle. It was just brown, murky, muddy water. And Bernadette went over obediently and tried to drink from the water, but it was so dirty that she had to throw it away. She was like gagging on it. So by the fourth time she tried to drink, she was able to drink, and she also ate some of the grass that was growing there. Well, the vision disappeared after Bernadette had done that. And later that same day, a spring started to flow from the spot where the grotto is now. That spring started to flow on.
And the spring has continued.
25th of February. This is my part. On the 10th appearance, which is a couple of days later now, 800 people, they had heard about the spring flowing, and more people were there. The next day, the 11th appearance, over 1,000 people came to see what was happening. And Bernadette was questioned by the judge later on and told pretty much not to go back. At the 12th apparition, which was some days later, was Bernadette was there. 1,000 people were there on that day. The authorities weren't able to quash the interest in what was happening there. And a friend of Bernadette's had a dislocated arm. And she put that arm, and she couldn't move her hand or anything, and she put the arm into the spring, and instantly the arm was able to move. It was no longer dislocated. So that is considered the first miracle of Our Lady of Lourdes, was that this woman could use her arm and her hand again. And people did witness that.
And later on you see, my turn yet?
I didn't talk.
Okay. Later on you see that there's a total of over 64, there's a total of 64 confirmed miracles, and a medical commission is set up, but this was the first time that it was scientifically unexplained how this could have happened. 13th appearance, March 2nd. At this appearance, Our Lady told Bernadette to go tell the priest, the words that Bernadette wrote down is, go tell the priest to come here in procession and to build a chapel here. So dutifully, after she prayed her rosary, she, accompanied by her two aunts, she went to the local pastor, Father Peramale, and told him about it and said, this is what Our Lady, the lady that appeared wants us to do. And he called her a liar, said, she's making all this up, you're lying and making all this up, and you're never to go to that grotto again. So this isn't the first time she's being told, never go to that grotto again. But later, the pastor did, I think, getting nervous, went to talk to the local bishop. But the local bishop basically said, yeah, she should stay away, but you guys stay away. Told the priest, don't go there, don't give any credence to this presumable hoax here. The 14th appearance, Bernadette had the same request from Our Lady, went to Father Peramale again, and this time the pastor said, look, find out the lady's name, find out who she is. You're thinking this is Our Lady, we don't know who she is. Ask her to tell you who she is, and if she tells you who she is, maybe we'll do something. Well, at the 14th appearance, Bernadette did ask, and Our Lady just smiled at her, didn't say anything. 15th appearance, March 4th, and I find this amazing, but you'll find this number of people that that went there amazing. 8,000 people. Okay? Now, this is in the 1800s, so I'm not sure how scientific it was, but 8,000 is a very large number, and I'm sure there were a lot of people there. This time, she would, because she had this request to ask the priest to come in procession to build a church, she went and talked to another priest, and again, and he told her the same thing, Father Cure, told her to go and ask the name and then come and tell me. But she went, she recited her rosary, she asked the lady for the name, but all she did was smile. When I got back, I went to Father Cure to tell him that I discharged his commission, and her only response was her smile. Then he said she was laughing at me and that I would do well not to go to her again. But I could not help but going. This is what Bernadette wrote. 16th appearance. This time she asked her 3 times, what her name was, and each time Our Lady just smiled at her. But on the 4th time, she stopped smiling, and with her arms, and this is what Bernadette wrote, with her arms down, she raised her eyes to heaven, then folding her hands over her breast, she said, I am the Immaculate Conception. And then, what's amazing is that it was just shortly before that the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception had been declared, and a country, peasant girl like this wouldn't be expected to know of the doctrine, let alone be able to know the exact phraseology. So she went and reported this. On the 17th appearance, a town physician came, and this town physician knew Bernadette very well, knew her from childhood, and actually he was coming to scientifically, he had a hypothesis. He wanted to write a theory that perfectly sane people can still have hallucinations, because he was convinced this was a hallucination by Bernadette. And do we have time? If we have time, I'd like to read what he wrote, because it's kind of like a scientific reporting. He said, Bernadette seemed to be even more absorbed than usual in the appearance. He had been there before watching her, upon which her gaze was riveted. I witnessed, as did also everyone else there present, the fact which I am about to narrate. She was on her knees saying with fervent devotion the prayers of her rosary, which she held in her left hand, while in her right hand was a large blessed candle, lit. The child was just beginning to make the usual ascent on her knees when suddenly she stopped, her right hand joining her left hand. The flame of the big candle passed between the fingers. Though fanned by a fairly strong breeze, the flame produced no effect upon her skin, which it was touching. Astonished at this strange fact, I forbade anyone to interfere, and taking my watch in my hand, I studied the phenomenon attentively for a quarter of an hour. At the end of this time, Bernadette, still in her ecstasy, advanced to the upper part of the grotto, separating her hands. The flame thus ceased to touch her left hand. Bernadette finished her prayer, and the splendor of the transfiguration left her face. She rose and was about to quit the grotto when I asked her to show me her left hand. I examined it carefully, but could not find the least trace of burning anywhere. I then asked the person who was holding the candle to light it again and give it to me. I put it several times in succession under Bernadette's left hand, but she drew it away quickly each time, saying, "You're hurting me." I record this fact as I have seen it without attempting to explain it. Many persons who were present at the time can confirm what I've said. But despite all of this, the following day, the mayor of the town barricaded the grotto and forbade people to go there. 18th appearance, is that yours?
That's yours.
Oh. The 18th appearance was the last, because after that the grotto was barricaded. Bernadette writes, "I thought I was at the grotto at some distance as I was at other times." In other words, even though she was barricaded and far away, in her mind and what she saw, she was right there at the grotto. All I saw was Our Lady more beautiful than ever. In 1858, October 1858, the church is slow. People are slow. So even up to this time, they weren't jumping at having the priest process there and build a chapel. But in October 1858, by order of Emperor Napoleon III, the grotto was reopened. They removed the barricades. After that, Bernadette saw no more apparitions, but she also did not visit the grotto again, which is, I thought, kind of interesting. But other people kept on visiting, and Lourdes since has grown to be one of the great Marian shrines, similar to Our Lady Guadalupe.
And this is a picture, you see in your package too, of the
Oh.
16th apparition.
Right, showing a lot
A
of people.
painting of the apparition, what it looks like. And then you can see the statue of Our Lady of Lourdes up in the grotto. That all that you can see. Okay? Okay. So we're going to go through some other aspects now of what the aftermath of the apparitions. But one of the interesting points we found in our research was Bernadette's body. You know, after the fact, there was a lot of interest and research, and there was an effort to make her saint, to canonize her. And in the course of that, her body was exhumed twice, and in you know, autopsied, or not autopsied, but examined. And each time that it was exhumed, she was cleaned and dressed in a new habit, and then put back into the coffin, to the earth. But what was amazing to the people who were doing it, there was a priest and other nurses and sisters there, because she was a daughter of Charity of Nevers, and they noticed that her body was uncorrupted. Now this has happened to other saints and other holy people in our time. We've witnessed other relics of people who are uncorrupted, but what that means is that they don't decay. And the picture you have in your packet here, that is not a painting, that's an actual picture of her today.
Our daughter couldn't believe it, and when I was pulling it up on the internet, she says, "That's a painting." I said, "No, I got this off of the internet, it's a picture."
She's been dead 128 years, and this is how she is looking today. And she was canonized in 1933. And to go through the timelines of the aftermath after the apparitions, in 1862, the local bishop declared that the faithful were justified in believing the reality of the appearances, and started to build the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception as the image, as the Madonna had requested. In 1864, a statue of the Madonna of Lourdes was crowned, and pilgrimages began. An interesting point here is that when Bernadette saw the image, she said she was profoundly disappointed because it wasn't nearly as beautiful as the Lady of Lourdes herself. So, and it's a very attractive statue.
Nowhere.
But nowhere is beautiful. In 1867, that first basilica was completed, but very quickly became too small. And they added another basilica in front of it, which is called the Basilica of the Rosary. So if you go there today, there's a huge church built on top of the grotto, and you really can't tell it's two different churches. It just looks like one massive church, one rising directly above the grotto and one in front.
The back part here,
Yeah.
right, that's
Yeah.
where the sanctuary is, was the original cathedral. It's hard to see, but original basilica, it's not a cathedral because there's no space in it.
Yeah.
The stream is inside the church, or is that?
Oh, the grotto's outside,
Oh,
right under, like on ground level down here on the side of where the basilica is. And we'll show you a picture of that
In a minute.
And that's where the spring still flows, and it flows into the baths, which is a series of rooms segregated male and female, where pilgrims and those needing healing can come and be helped by volunteers actually to bathe in the waters from the spring. And then in 1907, Pope Pius X declared February 11th as the feast day of Our Lady of Lourdes. And one thing that I found interesting to note here is that this is considered a private revelation and not a public revelation. And so because of that, as Roman Catholics, we are not required to believe in it. But it doesn't add any additional truth to the Catholic Church. It's not considered a truth of the Catholic Church, but we are, we don't have to believe in it. Okay.
This is the front view. of the
Okay,
basilica.
yeah, this is the front view of the basilica. So the Basilica of the Rosary would be in the front here, and the back is the other conception. And on the side here, you walk around to the side where the grotto is. And
To the right side.
And opposite of this is along the concourse for the evening processions, and on the concourse is another statue of Our Lady with the crown. But this is not the image of the grotto.
Okay, twice a day there's a procession of people, and this picture and then actually the next one you're going to see that it's a huge, I mean there's a lot of people, huge procession. And they go there to bathe, volunteers help them. Diane and I actually each went to the baths, and I've got to tell you, it's an incredible spiritual experience. There was nothing specifically I was asking for myself to feel. I prayed for others. And it's hard to explain. I mean, you have to experience it. Part of the spirituality to me was not even, in a sense, the water. The water was very cold, extremely cold, and yet it didn't feel cold. And yes, you go in, there's kind of a waiting line, and then you go into an area, and it's just, men only, and then for women, women only. And then you go into a smaller room where you change, and they're very modest for you. They hold up a towel while you take off your clothes, and you actually fall back into the water, and immerse just up to the neck. There's like, at least for me, there were like 4 guys, 2 on each side, to hold my shoulders, and 2 on the bottom to make sure I don't slip and fall. What to me was part of the great part of the spiritual experience were the volunteers. I saw, for example, if people are on wheelchairs, they kind of let them cut in front of you, so you're kind of waiting, and normally you would think you'd be annoyed, but people are very happy to let people cut in. But the thing I remember is that this man that in a wheelchair that cut in about 2, people are from all over the world, okay? Apparently the volunteer that pushed him up there didn't speak his language, so they motioned for another guy, and somebody else, another volunteer who spoke his language. So this other volunteer obviously didn't know this man, okay? And yet, as soon as he walked up to the chair, he knelt down beside him, held his hand, looked at him, and prayed with him. And I'm like just blown away. It's like, wow, the love that you see. And then the other thing was that one of the guys that was in the bath helping me, young man, about like in his 30s, spoke English, and you can tell what they speak because they have like little, flags here. Well, he spoke like about 5 languages. I think he was actually, main language was French, and he was from Canada, in Montreal. And I asked him, well, how long do you volunteer? He says, about 3 months. And so I said, what, do you work at home? Oh, yeah, but I just come, I just found it amazing that people would give up their time. There's nurses there, there's doctors there, all volunteering their time. Oh,
Can I share a little bit about my experience?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Tell them about your bath.
Yeah. Well, I'm on Fort Victoria, and then my husband, I wasn't sure about this up till the last minute whether I wanted to do it, because you need to take all your clothes off. I mean, everything comes off, okay. But I was assured that it was done very modestly, and it was a beautiful experience, because the volunteers, like Joe was saying, they first find out what language you speak, and they get a volunteer to be your primary helper who speaks your language. And they get the sheet, it's more like just a Muslim sheet, and they hold it up like that, and you take off your clothes, and they give you a sheet to wrap around yourself.
Oh, the men get that too. We got a little towel.
Okay, we got a big sheet. Okay, and then you walk into the bath part, and they tell you you're going to turn around, and maybe they tell you there's water up to your neck, and you have any questions, or what are you praying for, we'll pray with you. So you tell them you have intentions, and they'll pray with you. And then if they, after they dipped me down, dipped me up, and it was like I was weightless. They just do that, and they have this spiritual look on their faces that really touched me without even talking to Joe and finding out his experience. I thought, these people are holy. These people have the spirit with them. And as I was standing up, for some reason, I felt I wanted to get my face wet. So I said, can I get my face wet? And they gave me some water to wet my face. And it just felt like I needed to feel, I wanted to feel that water from head to toe. But it was a really beautiful experience. And then they dressed, and they give you time to dress, and they're holding the sheet up while because now you're wet, and it's cold, and you're trying to get your coats and your things on. And so it's kind of sticky, So I was just grabbing my coat. I had my main clothes on. I was just grabbing my coat, ready to run out, because there's a lot of people waiting. There's hundreds of people waiting. And I said, I'll put this on later. And the lady said, no, dear. She said, we're going to bundle you up. And she took time. She buttoned every button on my coat. And I just felt like it was my mother. Like I was back with Mommy, and she was making sure I was warm against the cold. And I really felt cared for.
I think the love and spirituality of the people, it just really blows you away. Even though there's a long line, and even though, they're helping, they tell you, take as long as you want, get up when you want, and you come down, get up when you want, we'll pray with you, and they do pray with you, it was, just kind of blows you away.
Yeah.
Now, it's hard to see, but this is a long line of people in wheelchairs, and they have in the area several, I think the French word is pension or something, maybe that's not it. It's like a hospital, they're like convalescent type hospitals, so if you make a pilgrimage, you can go there. Well, what's amazing is at these hospitals, here, it'd be like Kaiser or something, you'd be charged an arm and a leg. It's like, regular hotel type costs, and they have volunteer doctors, volunteer nurses, just amazing. This is across the plaza from where the cathedral is, not cathedral, I keep calling it cathedral, it's basilica, it's not a cathedral. There is a basilica of Pius X, and it's underground because the weather can get very nasty there. And actually, when we were there, it rained like crazy. Thunderstorm, yeah. Thunder, lightning, and all that. And so then the healing service is held underground. Okay, you want to talk about the grotto?
Okay, this is the grotto that you were asking about before. This is where the actual spring was and where the apparitions took place. And the statue up there is supposed to be the same size as the apparition was, which is very small. That was a petite woman, 13-year-old. She never really grew very tall. But the statue is supposed to be the same height as Bernadette. So that's supposed to be accurate.
So Bernadette's kneeling down there?
Bernadette's kneeling, well...
No, that's not Bernadette.
This is a nurse, actually.
Oh, okay.
This is a picture we took.
This is a picture I took in May of last year.
Okay, and what you're seeing there is candles. When the apparition has the tradition of the candles started.
It's a tower of candles.
And everywhere you go there, you can buy candles. They have candles in every color with these little cones to catch the wax, and you can
But
get candles.
within the shrine itself, the candles are really inexpensive. I was
Yes.
kind of surprised. They're not trying to make money. It's not like Disneyland.
So what you do is you queue up over here. here, and then you walk next to the spring into the grotto itself, like you're going in with the rocks over your head, kind of. And there's a place there where people can do petitions, that people have asked them to pray for them, from wherever they're from. And you can put your petitions there, and then you pray, and you touch the rocks as you go by. And
You would think it would be noisy. You can kind of see the head in the foreground. There's like an area to sit. And after Diane and I each had separately gone through the baths, we just happened to meet there. It's incredibly quiet. I mean, the prayerful, and they have a little sign that says you observe prayerful silence and all that. But I mean, it's incredibly quiet. And people just sit there. And kind of like us, we just sat there. It's like, wow, you know. I mean,
And-
words, you can't pray words because there's like no words you can say. It's like, wow.
And the next slide, you can see the petitions. It just shows a close-up of what a picture we took, where people have left flowers, names, different pictures, different things that they bring from home, in hopes of physical, mental, spiritual illness appearing. And then the next picture is of the candlelight procession Joe was telling you about. You see this large grassy area. Underneath there is that basilica, that underground basilica of Pius X.
That's the little green part.
Yeah.
Sorry I couldn't get this up.
And but it,
It's hard to see.
and every night thousands of people come for these. It'll rain or shine, but if it's really raining, it's in the basilica. But on the microphone, they have children and other people who take turns saying the decades of the Rosary. So it's very interactive, and you can you process with the candles and recite the Rosary.
And they do all in different languages.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right. They do it in
Yeah.
all different languages, so you follow along and have the best you
And
can.
this is a ritual every night.
Every night, every night.
Rain or shine. Okay, list of approved miracles. Well, first of all, there is actually a medical bureau that goes through medical histories of people who claim that they have been cured. And what they're looking for is that there is no explanation for the cure other than their devotion or their prayer. They're making a pilgrimage to Our Lady of Lourdes. That's what they're looking for. And the first one, as Diane talked about, was 1858. It was the 12th apparition, right? Or 11th? 12th apparition.
The first miracle?
Yes. And I picked number 64 because you don't want me to talk about all of these. By the way, if you're interested, you know where I got this list of all things? Wikipedia. You go on Wikipedia, you type in Our Lady of Lourdes, and you get all this stuff on Our Lady of Lourdes. And you get a listing of all these miracles. And of course, each is a link. You click on any particular one, and it'll tell you a whole bunch of stuff about that particular miracle. The last one is a Sergei Perin, P-E-R-I-N. He was cured on May 1st, 1970. He was 41 years old at the time, born in 1929. When he was 35 years old, he began to have neurological episodes, abrupt loss of consciousness. He would just lose consciousness. They diagnosed him with thrombosis in the left carotid artery, for which surgery was contraindicated. In other words, they couldn't operate on it, probably because it would have been life-threatening if they tried to operate on it.
Karate that day.
Karate, thank you. Carotid karate.
Nurse.
Thank you.
Nurse.
Anyway, and that was, I believe, in 1964 that he started that condition. By 1969, it had become a bilateral, meaning on both sides, okay, not just on his left side. And he went to Lourdes at age 40, and basically came back, nothing happened, okay. He continued to get worse. It deteriorated to a point where he was completely invalid and was granted a disability type of thing, which I think is a big thing because they don't give you a disability pension unless you're really disabled. And by 1970, he was almost blind, almost completely blind, and was considered as being an incurable invalid with no future possibility of recovery. He made a pilgrimage from Angers, I'm not sure exactly where that is, but it's in France somewhere, I believe. In 1970, he made a second pilgrimage there. And he, in the morning, he attended which they have twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon, a ceremony of anointing of the sick, and he immediately began to feel sensation. Immediately. By that afternoon, he was walking without, he was up and walking, and he also could see better, okay, even without his glasses. And he personally, at that point, when he left Lourdes, was convinced that he was cured. Once he got home, he was thoroughly checked, medically checked, and objectively, the doctors determined he was cured. The condition was gone, okay, in the carotid artery, bilaterally. And in October of 1970, the Medical Bureau, which is established to review these things, said that the cure was certain, instantaneous, and lasting. And then by 1974, the diocese moves a little slower. The Diocesan Medical Commission came to the same conclusion, that it was a miraculous cure. And then, let's see, by 1978, the Bishop of Angers recognized the miraculous character of this cure and invited Christians to see in this sign the merciful love of God. So that was the last cure that I saw, the last miracle.
And you know, these are Marian spirituality reports, but devotion reports. But when we're looking for like the spirituality behind the devotion, what was pointed out by some of the scholars was that as grand of a place as Lourdes has now become with the basilicas and the people and the volunteers and everything, we need to remember that in the nearby village where Bernadette lived, she lived in a room about the size of 10 by 14 feet with a family of 6. And it was very small. The family had economic troubles. And they were very, very poor, and she was illiterate. And the point was that it reminds us that the Virgin Mary has chosen the poorest and most ignorant to reveal to everyone